Several decades ago, Walter Fisher came up with the idea of the narrative theory. And this theory states that humans are at their very core storytelling creatures, that we all have individual narratives as well as cultural and collective narratives that we tell ourselves. Now, scholars since then have extended the idea of narrative theory to include the visual, because visual narratives are told not only through language, but also through the sharing of signs, symbols, and images. And the visual narrative was demonstrated fairly well in the viewer-listener disagreement myth. This myth sprang out of a presidential debate in 1960 between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy. Allegedly, audiences who listened to the debate on radio thought that Nixon won the debate, whereas audiences who watched the debate on television thought that Kennedy won. Now, this ultimately wasn't true, but the story goes that the people who watched the debate on TV saw Nixon as really nervous and kind of sweating and generally not very confident in what he was saying. Whereas the people who couldn't see him, who listened to him through the radio, heard the confidence in his voice and therefore thought that he won the debate. Whereas John F. Kennedy maybe wasn't as vocally persuasive, but he looked really strong and confident while he delivered his message. Now, as I said, this was never actually proven that people had these two different perceptions of these political candidates. But we do know that the visual has a really powerful impact on the way that we view political candidates. And so many political candidates, even still today, construct their images very carefully in order to determine how the public perceives them. It's unfortunate that even still today, to some extent, many female political candidates face the fact that the media is going to be covering what she is wearing. And this is something that Hillary Clinton faced throughout her career. Anytime that she was running for any sort of high-profile office, the media was always talking about what color her pantsuit was. And that's not to say that female political candidates are the only ones who have their fashion critiqued by the media on the daily. Male candidates sometimes face this as well, as was demonstrated by the Obama tan suit scandal. During the, I don't even remember, it was several years ago at this point, but there was one week where President Obama wore a tan suit to a press briefing, and it was all the media could talk about. Presidents don't wear tan suits, was what the media was arguing. Usually they are found in black or navy suits. And so it was very odd for Obama to make this fashion choice. He probably thought he looked pretty good in that tan suit, but the media disagreed, and it was all that they could talk about. So unfortunately, it goes to show that the visual can sometimes distract from the actual arguments that we are trying to make. Because rather than reporting on what Obama talked about in that press briefing or reporting on the policies that Hillary Clinton was pushing forth in her candidacy. Instead, the media was too focused on the way that the candidates looked. And so we are constructing these visual narratives very, very carefully. And the visual narrative can have an outsized impact on the way that others perceive us.